It is a responsibility we share with all the nations of the Arctic. The region can become a hostile arena of economic and possibly military conflict, or it can become a shining example of how nations can plan, live, and work together intelligently and wisely with love for their planet Earth. We must join other Arctic nations in a federated approach to our common problems and opportunities. We owe it to future generations of the whole world. I have dreamed of the day when Americans would change their attitude toward Alaska and the Arctic. It begins to look as though history, economics, and world politics are with me, and as though the day has begun. It's an excerpt from The Day of the Arctic Has Come, written by Governor Walter J. Hickel, former governor of Alaska and founder of the Institute of the North. This was written in 1973. We know that today, that day that he imagined decades ago has come, and that our future is much as he described it. Welcome. My name is Nils Andreassen. I'm the Executive Director of the Institute of the North, one of the hosts of the 2013 Arctic Energy Summit. We're very glad to have so many distinguished colleagues, scholars, community leaders, and other officials joining us for these 3 days as we begin to work toward a course of action for Arctic energy. Before I go too much further in my remarks, I want to make 2 housekeeping notes. Please do turn off your phones completely. There are translation units that this will help immensely if your phones are off, so please do turn off your phones. And then I want to note that we will always be on time. That time might not correspond to what your agendas say, but we will, we're here to do the work of the group. And so whatever time the group needs is especially important for us to be responsive to. So if we need to end early and give you extra time to network and get to know each other, then we'll do that. If we need to go long to get an extra piece of work done, then we'll do that. But I want to assure you that we'll always be on time. I want to thank first the Institute of the North, the Board of Directors for the Institute, 3 of whom are here today, Drew Pierce, Mayor Reggie Jewell, and Teresa M. from ASRC. The Institute of the North's Board of Directors has been very supportive of our efforts to foster engagement on Arctic energy development, and we're very glad to have their support. We have a number of partners here in Iceland who have allowed this and provided us support for the Energy Summit, and I want to specifically recognize Halldór Johannesson with the Arctic Portal. I want to recognize Orkustofnun, the National Energy Authority of Iceland, and also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They have been very supportive of the development of this summit. And indeed, as an SDWG endorsed project that is co-led by Iceland and the U.S., it's important to understand where those partnerships come into play. I also want to thank some key sponsors that have made this week's efforts possible. The Nordic Council, Icelandair, Shell, and ASRC, all of whom have been very supportive, and a number of additional sponsors who are in your program and on the banner on the wall. We've had great support, great response to this effort. I also wanted to point out 2, and maybe they're in the room, but two members of both the Arctic Portal and the Institute of the North staff who have spent countless hours working to make this possible and sending probably more emails than they'd ever imagined they could, and lots of phone calls. But Lisa Valdemarsdottir at the top of the stairs there, and also Jeff Cooper from the Institute of the North, who is probably outside picking up things. But if you have any questions throughout your time here, please feel free to contact Lisa or Jeff, myself, or Halldór. How many here in the room attended the Arctic Energy Summit that happened in Anchorage in 2007? One, two, a handful? Good, good. At that Arctic Energy Summit, which was an SDWG project and also an International Polar Year project, the focus was on technology. And the outcomes really noted that the technology and the technical aspects of Arctic energy development are there. Certainly they need to be adapted, perhaps to an Arctic environment, but more or less the technology and the technical expertise is there. And in the north and around the world, we have the ability to develop Arctic energy resources and connect them to Arctic communities. In preparing for the 2013 Energy Summit, it was very important to the steering committee that we move from technology to policy. And so these next 3 days are very focused on the policies that facilitate the adoption of technology, the adaptation of technical expertise, that facilitate community and economic resilience, and that connect local stakeholders with subnational, national, and international decision makers. The themes of the 2013 Arctic Energy Summit, richness, resilience, and responsibility, are themes that we will come back to throughout these 3 days. In every panel discussion, in every workshop, in every paper, we're going to ask of you that you identify what aspects connect to which themes. And for me, I have a starting hypothesis that richness plus responsibility equals resilience. That's my hypothesis going into this, that if we responsibly develop the resources of the North, that we benefit both in community and economic resilience. And the process for the Energy Summit hopefully is different than any other summit you've attended. It will be interactive. It will be really focused on meaningful dialogue. It will require you to participate and engage in as much of a way as you're comfortable with, both in discussions, in plenary sessions, in workshops, and in the concurrent working sessions throughout the rest of the day, but also outside these rooms. There are worksheets in the NOUST, in the reception area, where we've developed what we think are energy policies for each Arctic nation. And we're going to ask of you that you tear them apart, that you write on them, that you cross out words that you don't agree with, that you add to them, and that as an outcome from this, we have redeveloped the energy policies of 8 Arctic nations. Not formally, for those of you representing those nations. We're not changing your policies, but really just to encourage some key thinking, critical thinking of what's in place, and to be thinking about what's next. Where do we go from here? With the increased attention that we have on the Arctic, what policies, what frameworks do we have in place that support the people who live there? The results from the Arctic Energy Summit are critical for the meaning behind summit. A summit is a convening of a group of leaders to develop and articulate a course of action. And you are invited here today and gathered here today to be part of setting that course of action. And we hope that the results from these 3 days of discussions, presentations, networking, and workshops, that we're able to come out with policy-relevant findings that are important and relevant to the Arctic Council's work, and specifically the Sustainable Development Working Group. That we're able to identify gaps in knowledge and if there are questions that we come out of the summit with, that we're able to develop project ideas that can help answer those questions in the years to come. And especially important, I think, from that is that we should be focused on what's relevant. It's easy to come out of a conference, a discussion with some very idealistic aspirations for what we'd like to see happen. And I want to be sure that together we're able to be mindful of what's relevant, what is possible, what makes economic sense at the same time that it is environmentally sensitive. So we want to keep that in mind as we're pursuing gaps in knowledge, policy relevant findings, and project ideas. Each of the sessions, and I want to encourage you to be thinking of the human dimension of these discussions, both the plenary discussions and throughout. How do what we're talking about, how does it impact the human dimension, communities, peoples of the North, but also our nations and global citizens? Again, yes, the starting point for the Energy Summit is the utilization of the Arctic's energy resources, their development, their management, for the benefit of the people who live here, but that this is done responsibly, and that together that results in resilient communities and economies.